that they would burn 6,000 calories. That's more than marathon. That is more than marathon. And I don't know if that's true or not, but it at least does get us thinking that the brain is a really costly organ, and other organisms haven't developed to our level because there is an inhibiting factor of just being able to feed this really costly chunk of fat in our head. So why is it that we as humans have far exceeded other organisms? And maybe it is this reason right here. This is another graph that kind of shows, you see this so early on, basically, Australopithecus had small groups. At the very largest, 60, you go up to Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Neanderthal, and on up to anatomically modern humans. And the group size continues to get bigger and bigger, to where I've heard of really cool studies that look at the size of our neocortex, kind of our forebrain, and basically when you compare that to other organisms, I should say first that there's a correlation between group size and the size of your neocortex, because the bigger your group size is, the more you have to know about different relationships. Where relationships, if they grow linearly, the complexity of those relationships grows exponentially. Meaning, as an example, if there's a group size of, let's say, 4 people here, I need to remember my relationship to you, my relationship to you, my relationship to you. But I also need to remember your relationship to you, your relationship to you, your relationship to him, and your relationship to him. And so on and so forth, to where you increase that to 10, and my gosh, you are blowing up the multiplication table here in complexity of relationships that you have to remember, to the point where on this graph of plotting neocortex size to group size, we should be about at 150 relationships. A group, kind of like a small town size, to where we can remember enough relationships for that. And I've heard even people associating that with what's the ideal church size. Think about the implications of that. You know, looking at Facebook, what do most people have as the amount of people? Not necessarily that they know, but necessarily that they can have some kind of deep relationship with. I think that there are very interesting implications for that socially. You know, what is the ideal size for an office branch in a business? Maybe at the very top, 150 people. I have heard people run businesses on that thought, which I find very, very interesting. But the point that I want to draw from that is that maybe the reason that we're so intelligent and so moral in comparison to other organisms is that we as a species have needed a group more than any other organism previous to us. We have needed each other more than anybody else. And not only that, we have needed more quantity-wise of each other than any other group prior to us, to where we've developed these very intricate hierarchies, these very intricate specialization, and this is just, you know, added on top of each other, to where very early on, you know, you look at hunter-gatherer societies, and the kind of the most advanced their societies get is where women get the carbohydrates and men get the meat. I think I actually have pictures somewhere. Yeah. Where women are in charge of farming and things like that. Sounds really sexist, but this is actually what hunter and gatherer societies, you know, objectively do, largely. And men are the ones that hunt. And maybe, you know, that specialization turned in complexity too with agriculture. You know, not just being in charge of carbohydrates, but being in charge of who's going to, you know, plant the rows, who's going to plow, who's going to work with irrigation, who's going to get the seed, you know, who's going to make the spear with hunting, who's going to be the one that's going to be in charge of kind of rallying around this big organism like a man. You know, these specializations, who's going to later on, who's going to, you know, do the metallurgy to be able to make the spear tips, those kind of things. So we keep adding on the complexity of our societies and relationships, making us more and more dependent on each other, to where our brains have had to kind of catch up with the need that we have of being able to have really in-depth relationships as well as very, very many relationships. And we have far exceeded any other organism prior to us in our need for each other as well as our complexity of those needs. And then maybe just to touch on this thought of, I've been fascinated with the idea, why is it that the Middle East is called the cradle of civilization? Why is it that these simple little things all came from there, one single spot on the earth, when there were humans spread across the entire world? Why is it that they were the first ones to come up with a form of written language? Why were they the first ones to be able to, they brought about the Bronze Age, they brought about the Iron Age, they brought about every great age of dealing with metal, which is a really difficult thing to do. Agriculture came from the Middle East. They were the first ones to be able to domesticate plants. They were the first ones to be able to domesticate animals, goats and oryx, or became cows or something like that. They were the first ones to have a written code of law. They were the first ones to have an advanced religion like of monotheism. Not that necessarily makes them better than other religions, but I'm just saying that they came up with a lot of really, really big ideas that had really, really big effects on Earth. Why is it that this one little spot, this tiny little speck of geography, created it all? And maybe it's because they have been having more wars and have been able to increase the complexity of those wars in more and more ways. I might have a picture. Yeah. So as we, as a species, have we've been fighting with each other for a heck of a long time. I've heard people make something of the fact that when stone tools were developed, our skulls immediately started to get thicker. Meaning, when we developed weapons, we immediately had a need to be able to have a thicker skull to be able to withstand the pressures of war, bashing each other on the head and killing each other.
Well,
Yeah.
that's more, those are the ones who survive.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They're the ones who reproduce.
Yeah.
Wow.
Everybody was getting hit on the head, and the ones with the thicker skull were the ones surviving. That's kind of the way that story in some simple terms played out. So we've been fighting for a really long time. How does this promote morality? Because what it does is it puts us in a situation where, once again, we need each other really, really bad. And the societies it's not just about girth. It's not just about brute strength. It eventually became more about who can make the best spear, who can make the best sword, who can make the best shield, who can develop a system of morality and religion with with the ability to pull each other together in times of war to be able to marshal an army. Think about the complexity of that. It's not just about, whoever has the strongest arm. It's about who can get and work together as a team the best to say, hey, let's either attack or defend, whichever be the case, together, and do it in a way that is done effectively. So I've heard people make an argument, like Robert Wright in Non-Zero, that one of the reasons that we have developed to be nice is because we have really needed each other to be able to win wars. The groups that survived were the ones that knew how to work together as a group, which I think is interesting to think about. So, just spurring on thoughts. So one final one, and maybe we can ink out a little bit of a discussion. Where do I want to go with this? I think I have a picture. Yep. So another thing that we can't ignore in this whole being able to understand, how is it that we're nice? How is it that we're moral? How is it that we care about each other? And a factor in that is known as sexual selection, where women women are the choosers. Women are the powerhouse that in many ways have